Hello everybody, and thank you for coming back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm, where you're meeting me, your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque. And I hope you guys been having a fun week. It's been a little crazy for me, but enough of all of that. Let's just get right into today's topic, which today's topic is going to be pretty simple. If you guys have been paying attention to my page, you pretty much know the question I have asked, and it's pretty much, how do people create their own quote-unquote concepts? Okay, so just want to shoot that out there, that when it comes to creating concepts, there's no real set method or boundaries or whatever the case may be for you to create something that's called an original concept. Okay, I know a lot of people probably sitting out there and thinking that, there's not really any new concepts people are coming out with, or everyone's just really jumping on a bandwagon of a certain concept that's really popular with a lot of people. A great example is clusters, which I'm not going to get into a whole lot of, but I'm just using clusters as an example as one of those freshest things that have come out in the community that a lot of people have been really getting on and trying to expand and really solidify it as its own concept, and I totally understand. It's great. So, first things first, what I would like to say is, the question that a lot of people are probably going to be asking is, what is considered a concept in gloving? Well, it's really simple if you think about it. You can go from something as basic as liquid or tutting, and what I kind of clumped together is digit styles and clusters, because they all kind of follow the same methodology of how to operate, just different outcomes happen. It still kind of uses very similar muscle memory motions and things like that to pull off those effects, but I'm not saying that they're all the same. They're very distinct from each other. It's just when it comes to like an umbrella term, which we haven't really figured out a term for putting those three together, I just kind of put them together. Some people might just call it digiting, some people call it digit dials, or they just have the clusters on its own thing. I don't know. That's just kind of me. I kind of lump them together because they do use the same method and things of that nature, but they're very distinct from each other in a vacuum. But see, you also have other things that really kind of expand on its own into more abstract states. You have things like tech, flow, musicality, showmanship, things of that nature, where it's more expanded on an abstract scale as opposed to something more concrete like liquid, tutting, digit styles, clusters, and stuff like that. Okay, so those are pretty much our kind of concepts. Those are just good examples of the concepts that we have in gloving. Now, granted, there's a lot more that go out there, but I will use those as the examples that I want to use to help with the idea of creating your own concept. Okay, so where do we start from there? Pretty much is how to conceptualize a concept. All right, so one thing that I know I've heard Puppet talk about, I've heard a couple of other glovers that are pretty high up there, like Fry. I remember talking about it when Fry was talking a lot about flails. Flails is one of his favorite things to do, and that's one of the concepts that he really liked in gloving. So they have their own methods and things like that of how they come up with concepts. But one thing that I would certainly say when it comes to conceptualizing a concept is to find something that you can either A, replicate, or B, imitate. Okay, what I mean by that is that if you find something in your everyday life that has something that sticks out to you that you think would be really cool to see happen in a gloving light show, that's where you kind of want to start, is where you find something like that. Now, where are some ideas that help you with that? Okay, so first thing I want to say is maybe it's a movement. For example, Puppet would talk about what I like to call the typical jellyfish argument, is watching how a jellyfish operates and how it moves within the water, and then having your hand kind of replicate or imitate the motion that the jellyfish is doing, so you can get that jellyfish effect. Okay, I use that as a very basic example because it's like the first thing that always pops into my head when I come to thinking about how to conceptualize concepts, and that's always the first example that pops into my head. But that's not the only thing. All right, so another thing is a certain shape. Any type of shape that you see. I know a lot of people have been really kind of wanting to incorporate triangles more into gloving, which I'm totally on board with, because it's an odd numbered shape instead of a square where it's an even numbered shape. So I kind of like seeing this, angular, as no pun intended, but an angular approach to gloving formats, okay? And especially in the techniques of using, your fingers in terms of tutting to actually create these triangles. Now, that's just another good example I always try to do. I know a lot of people kind of are on the fence about trying to incorporate triangle shapes into gloving. It's one of those things I feel like we just kind of need to work on and keep working on it until we find something that works visually to not only us but to the viewers to make sense. Okay, another great example is maybe an object. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, well, isn't a shape kind of an object? Not necessarily. That's not the point. But there are certain objects that people do. Here's a great example of an object that somebody incorporated into gloving. Mez created the concept of clocking. Okay, he took the idea of how a clock operates and how it works and how it looks, and incorporated his hands to replicate and imitate what a clock does. Therefore, we have the whole concept on its own called clocking. Another great example is like teleporting. Now, granted, teleporting isn't necessarily a concept. I find it more as a style archetype, but the idea of how teleporting came to be is almost the same method of how concepts came to be, if that makes any sense. So, another great example that I would like to say is a behavior. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say maybe a movement and behavior are the same thing, which I don't necessarily think so. To me, a movement is just a movement. It is an action that you see being performed. A behavior is when you can actually read the movement and, denote what is being portrayed. What if it's, a aggressive type of behavior? What if it's more docile type of behavior? Things of that nature where an emotion can be conveyed through the action. That's what I mean by a behavior. These are just kind of examples that I feel some people have used in the past to create concepts that we use today. Again, clocking is a great example. Morphing is another example, which, turns into its own style archetype. Teleporting is another great example. Things of that nature. Okay, so there's your kind of idea of where you can kind of begin is if you find something, whether it's in nature or in society, that you feel like, hey, that would be really cool to replicate into a light show. There you go. You have the first steps of creating a concept. Okay. So one major thing when a lot of people always ask me is like, okay, I found an idea to start on my conceptualizing concept deal, right? But a lot of people are trying to always find where is a good starting point to work on creating this concept. Okay. So one major thing that I always try to tell people is let's look at what we already have established in our community in terms of concepts to see if there's something already been established that can help mitigate trying to replicate or imitate whatever the case may be, whether it's a movement, a shape, a behavior, an object, where, whatever. Okay. Going through the established concepts, probably in a way to me, it's kind of like a shortcut, but not necessarily. You're taking what we've already know and reworking it to better suit the needs of your concept. Okay. So again, like with the jellyfish thing, that's more of a liquidy type motion. So we already know liquid pretty well. With that being said, we can use our knowledge of liquid to help replicate and imitate the motion of a jellyfish and water, right? That's an example I try to use. Now, if you find something that works within the established set of concepts that we have established in the community, well, there you go. Half your work is already done for you. Okay. Now you just got to refine it to make whatever concept you're trying to create work with that. Okay. Now, I know sometimes you might have a concept that might need a little extra help, and that's okay. What tends to happen is what people look at is when they see something within our established archetypes of concepts and start combining a couple to help replicate or imitate whatever the idea that they're working on to work. That's usually the case, like wave tutting is like, to me, the best example of combining two different concepts into one. It combines tutting and liquid into one solid thing and becomes its own thing. It is an amalgamation of both liquid and tutting. You know, it has its sharp static points, and then it has its fluid motions going from one point to another. You know, it's a beautiful harmony of two concepts in one. All right. So you might have to do that, and that's totally fine, because what tends to happen when you start combining the two, you start to learn how to balance between both concepts and to help replicate or imitate the motions or behaviors or shapes or whatever you're going for. You know, if that's a method of how to get into that shape or object or behavior, that's totally fine as well. You know, there are ways to work around these problems. You know, it's not just only you have to stay within one set of concepts. You know, combining two concepts together to make a whole new set of concepts is a great thing that helps expand our palette. And here's one major thing that I always try to tell, especially when it comes to newcomers, when they want to try to sit here and try to conceptualize a concept that they can call their own. The best place to start, the absolute best place to start, is with the basics. Okay, taking the basic foundational structures that we've all established throughout the years of gloving, it's the best place to start. Why? Because to me, when you look at the basic foundational structures, it is like looking at a blank canvas. Okay, and then when you work and tweak around with the basics, you start painting your picture, and then eventually you come up with the whole concept on your own. To me, that's why, this is why, especially when it comes to a lot of veteran glovers, to talking to newcomers, we stress, and I mean literally stress, to the point that it is a dead horse being beaten into the ground and turned into horse meat and still being beaten into the ground. It is that important to get these basics down, because you take the basic foundational structures and you expand from there. Okay, that's where a lot of people are going to tell you where an average glover is going to be set apart to become a good glover if they work from the basics and start creating from there. Okay, you know, as much as everyone wants to sit here and go, oh, but the basics are so boring, I want to get into more fun stuff. Okay, I understand that. We all understand that. You kind of just want to get to that point already, and I get it. I totally feel your pain on that. There's many projects I have going on that I want to be at a certain point already, but I can't just be there already, because you have to work to get there. Okay, martial arts is the same way. You can't be a grandmaster martial artist within a couple of minutes and get there already. You know, they spent years upon years breaking down these basic structural foundations of martial arts into their memory so much that they can not only do it in their sleep, I'm pretty sure they can do it after they're dead. Okay, like that's how important it is to them. Okay, and that's how important it should be to you to master these basics. Okay, all right, I'm done talking about the basics right now. All right, but that's how important it is. That's the way it's going to separate you and make you stand out as a very unique glover than to, as everyone else likes to say, the cookie cutter glover that everyone seems to be. You know, which I do not believe everyone's the same cookie cutter glover. Like, yes, there are a lot of moves that everyone uses, but if you mix in your own stuff through all that stuff, that's what pushes you away from being the generic glover, you know. So that's the way I want to look at it, and I hope you guys are also looking at it in that fashion. Okay, so where do we come from when we go to creating from established concepts? Okay, well, everybody should already know where I'm going to go with this. The first thing I'm always going to say is deconstructionalism. Okay, one of the things I love about deconstructionalism is breaking things down to its bare basic parts and putting it back together really helps you understand the concepts inside and out. Okay, it is what, to me, is what is needed for you to fully understand what it is with the concepts that either you A, are creating, or B, using to help gain some foundational structure to create your own. Okay, deconstructionalism is a great thing. I know a lot of people kind of roll their eyes at me when I say deconstructionalism, but trust me, it really does help. You know, a clockmaker doesn't just learn to be a clockmaker just by looking at a clock. He has to literally deconstruct the entire clock all the way down to its parts and reconstruct it back together. Now, the thing that I like about deconstructualism when it comes to gloving is that when you actually break down concepts down to the basic parts, then you actually start seeing how you can fit these parts in different ways, therefore creating your own little concept through the process of reconstruction. Now granted, it's not going to be the exact same reconstruction, and that's totally okay. That is great, because it doesn't have to be the same way. Again, that's what's going to separate you from everybody else, is when you actually start pushing these boundaries and what you start seeing, okay? Like for me, I actually like making movements and shapes and stuff like that actually causes my audience to be confused. And the main reason is because I want my audience to get confused from time to time, where they just wait, hold on, what's going on? And before they know it, something else is already happening that's drawing them in. I like that whole idea, but that's just personally me, So again, deconstructionalism is the best way to start. Now, another thing I will certainly say is, like, once you actually deconstruct on what you're creating, expand upon what you're creating. See how else you can get into that form, or how to get out of that form. What other concepts can actually lead and transition into your new concept fluidly, and not only transition in, but to transition out of. That's another important thing when it comes to, once you create a good concept, you gotta find a good way to transition in and transition out of it in a fluid manner that will make sense not only you, but to the audience as well. Here's one simple way of doing that, and I know this is going to sound crazy to a lot of you, but trust me, just kind of think about it here for a minute, okay? What I like to do from time to time when it comes to concepts is I call it angle shifting, okay? Angle shifting is very simple. So let's just say you're doing, basic tutting, you're just making boxes, and you break down the boxes and you make a new box and you're moving around, and it's all just facing forward. How about actually just shifting your body 90 degrees and doing the exact same thing, but you're not pointing it at your audience, right? You're giving them a whole different angle and side to view your concepts from. Therefore, to them, it might actually look like a whole new concept. It's again, the whole idea of point perspective perception when it comes to our shows with angles is unparamount, in my opinion. Is something that we can actually utilize, that a lot of us do utilize, but I feel like a lot of newcomers kind of overlook this idea that a simple shifting of your angles and the viewpoints of where your audience is watching your concept can be a completely different look than it is just straightforward at them, okay? So it's one of those things that I always tell people, don't just sit there and have your body be like this rigid wall and your hands just moving in front of it. Twist your body around, move it around, put yourself in these weird, awkward angles to come up with these really cool concepts to really push yourself out there, all right? And so with that being said, the final part I want to say is taking all of what I just told you and amalgamizing it into one thing, okay? You can have this idea of either a movement, a shape, a behavior, or an object, and you can work through the established concepts that we have, combining them using the basics, and then you can either deconstruct part of it, reconstruct part of it, expand upon what you've already been done, maybe just doing a quick angle shift, and you just combine all that together and smash it all together into this weird amalgamation, and you hopefully will come out with a new concept, okay? That's how crazy it is. And in a way, in essence, it's very simple, but when it comes to actual practice, that's when you actually need to actually focus and really not only figure out how it's going to work with your hands, but really study what the idea of your concept is. Wherever you got the idea from, you should study wherever that idea came from to really help solidify the concept that you're trying to create, if that makes any sense. Okay, again, if we're talking about jellyfish as a stereotypical example, if you think you want to incorporate jellyfish movements into your light show, watch a National Geographic documentary on jellyfish. Like, the idea of understanding how their motions and how their muscles work is also going to be able to be incorporated how your muscles might have to work in order to pull that off. It's not just simple, just moving your hand forward and having your fingers just do a little squeezy motion and everything. No, there's a fluid motion that you got to replicate, right? So studying that will help you get there, okay? So in summary, when it comes to creating your own concepts, the best way, in my opinion, is just Once you have your basics mastered down, just expand upon there and just see how you can tweak and shift everything in different ways. If you feel like you have to have like your right hand twisted so the palm's facing towards your shoulder and your thumb's pointing forward from your right hand to get off an angle, that's fine too. I do that sometimes in my shows as well, and I know sometimes it looks really weird, but at the same time I'm okay with it because my audience knows what's happening. They understand what I'm doing and why I have it set up that way. Okay, so if you that's pretty much all for my episode. All right, I don't really think I need to go that much more into detail about it, but if you have any questions I did not cover in this episode, you do have the various outlets you can hit me up at. Of course, I do have the Facebook page, which is aptly named The Gloving Paradigm. And of course, I do have an email, which is muttonchopguy@gmail.com. You can definitely send me an email there for any questions that you might have. And of course, you can also find me on Reddit, which is under the username muttonchopguy. And of course, I do have a Discord server, which the link to that will be in this episode's description. So please click on that and join in on my Discord. It would be great to have more people to talk to. I do have a good loyal base of people that I talk to in my Discord server. So I'm hoping that if I can get more people in there, it would be great. I love having these discussions with people. I always like having conversations about gloving. So if you're the type of person who likes talking about gloving a lot like I do, let's talk. I love talking about it. Let's talk about it. But yes, that is pretty much all for my episode. I really also would like to thank everybody who has liked the page so far. Facebook said that I can actually grow and expand my audience if I actually put out an ad, and it actually gave me credit to put out this ad. And when I did, I went from 213 to like 254 within a matter of minutes. So maybe I should keep doing that. I don't know. I thought it was kind of crazy. I went from 213 to 254 within a matter of minutes. It was kind of crazy. So, but alright, I'm pretty sure you guys are done hearing me rambling. But that is all for my episode. I love you guys. I'm your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque, and I'll see you guys all next week.